He promised he would not leave me, and he did not. Those were the words a dying 5-year-old girl whispered to the nurses who cut her frozen clothes off at 2:47 in the morning. The boy who carried her was already crawling away into the darkness to die alone. He was 10 years old, homeless. He had walked 12 miles through the deadliest blizzard in 50 years with her on his back. He fell 21 times. His core temperature dropped to 27 degrees. His feet turned white from frostbite. The doctors said he should have been dead at mile 6. But Danny Mercer kept walking because he made a promise. What happened next brought 500 bikers to their knees. Subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what city you are watching from. Let me see how far this story has traveled. Stay until the end. This one will change you. He was 10 years old. He had been living inside an abandoned water tunnel beneath the Stillwater lift bridge. And right now, watching the sky turn the color of a bruise, Danny Mercer knew something terrible was coming. Not the kind of terrible that came with fists, or empty refrigerators, or social workers who smiled too much and helped too little. This was different. This was the kind of terrible that killed people, the kind that buried entire towns and left nothing but silence and frozen bodies and questions that nobody could answer. Danny pulled his stolen sleeping bag tighter around his shoulders. He had taken it from an outdoor supply store 2 months ago. Walked in looking like any poor kid, walked out with his heart pounding and his survival secured for another winter. He had felt bad about it for almost an hour. Then the first frost came, and guilt seemed less important than not dying. Survival simplified things. It stripped away questions of right and wrong and left only one. Will this keep me alive until tomorrow? Danny pressed his hand against the concrete wall of his tunnel. The vibration was wrong. He could feel it in his palm, in his bones, in some primal part of his brain that had learned to read danger the way other kids read comic books. The air tasted like metal. The birds had been fleeing south in waves all afternoon. Refugees from a war that had not started yet. His mother had taught him to read these signs. His mother had taught him everything that mattered. Laura Mercer. Blonde hair that caught the sunlight like threads of gold. Hands that could make a peanut butter sandwich feel like a feast. A voice that turned bedtime stories into something sacred. She sang in the church choir every Sunday, and Danny would sit in the third pew, watching her mouth move, feeling the music vibrate in his chest like a second heartbeat. She started coughing in April. By June, she was coughing blood into napkins and calling it just a cold. By August, the doctors had a word for it. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The kind of word that turned adults pale and made them speak in whispers when they thought Danny could not hear. But Danny heard everything. He heard his mother crying in the bathroom at 3 in the morning. He heard his father screaming at God in the garage. He heard the doctor tell his father that there was nothing more they could do, that it was a matter of weeks now, that they should prepare. Prepare. As if you could prepare a 7-year-old boy to lose the only person in the world who made him feel safe. The last night was the worst. Laura could barely keep her eyes open. Her body had become a prison of bones and paper-thin skin. But when Danny crawled into bed beside her, she found the strength to stroke his hair one final time. "Baby, listen to me." Her voice was a whisper, a ghost of the voice that used to fill churches. "I am listening, Mama. You are going to be something special. You hear me? Something extraordinary. The world is going to try to tell you different. People are going to try to make you small. But you were born for big things, Danny Mercer. I know it like I know my own name." Danny's tears fell onto her hospital gown, hot and desperate. "Do not leave me, Mama, please. I will be good. I will be so good. Just do not leave me." Laura's eyes glistened, already seeing somewhere else, already half gone. "Everything will be okay, baby, I promise. Everything will be okay." She died at 4:17 in the morning. Danny was still holding her hand. He did not let go for 3 hours. The nurses had to pry his fingers loose one by one while he screamed so loud the entire ward heard him. She had promised everything would be okay. She had been wrong. His father, Carl Mercer, lasted 22 days after the funeral. 22 days of bourbon and silence and staring at Danny like he was a ghost, like he was the reason she was gone, like looking at his son's face was a punishment he could no longer endure. On the 23rd day, Danny came home from school to an empty trailer. No note, no explanation, no goodbye. Just a half-empty bottle of Jim Beam on the counter and silence where his family used to be. He checked every room, called his father's name until his voice broke, sat on the kitchen floor for 6 hours waiting for headlights that never came. He was 7 years old. The state found him 3 days later. A neighbor reported the smell, not a dead body, rotting food. A 7-year-old boy had been feeding himself from whatever he could reach in the pantry, stale crackers, peanut butter eaten straight from the jar with his fingers, tap water. The social worker was a kind-looking woman named Janet who smiled too much and smelled like lavender. "Do not worry, Danny. We are going to find you a wonderful family, good people. You are going to be just fine." Danny stared at her with eyes that had already learned the weight of broken promises. His mother had promised everything would be okay. His father had not even bothered to promise. He just left. Adults lied. That was what Danny learned at 7 years old. Adults lied, and the bigger the smile, the bigger the lie. They placed him with the Burtons. Gerald and Patricia Burton lived on a 200-acre farm outside of Pine City. They had 8 foster children. The state paid $450 per child per month. Do the math. That is $3,600 a month in government checks for children who never saw a doctor, never saw a dentist, never saw the inside of a classroom. The children saw fields, dawn to dark, every day, regardless of weather. Corn in summer, clearing in fall, livestock in winter. Gerald Burton was built like a fireplace, square, brick red, radiating a heat that burned anyone who got too close. He did not hit the children often. He did not need to. The threat was enough. The back of his hand was enough. The belt hanging on the kitchen wall was enough. Patricia did not intervene. Patricia did not see. Patricia had perfected the art of looking away until looking away became her entire personality. Danny worked. He worked until his hands blistered, and his blisters bled, and his blood dried into calluses that made his hands look like they belonged to a man 3 times his age. He did not complain. Complaining meant Gerald's belt. Complaining meant no dinner. Complaining meant the small closet under the stairs where Gerald put children who forgot their place. Danny was placed in the closet 7 times in 11 months. Each time he sat in the darkness and whispered his mother's words like a prayer. "You are going to be something special." He stopped believing it around the 4th time, but he kept saying it because the alternative was silence. And silence in the dark was worse than any lie. On a Tuesday night in March, 11 months into his placement, Danny made his decision. He waited until Gerald's snoring shook the farmhouse walls. He waited until Patricia's sleeping pills pulled her under. He took a coat, a pair of boots 2 sizes too big, a bread knife he never intended to use, and he walked out the back door into a Minnesota night that was 15 degrees below zero. He was 8 years old. He never looked back. The state searched for him. They searched for 4 months, then reduced it to a quarterly check, then forgot about him entirely. Danny Mercer became a case number in a filing cabinet, another lost child in a system designed to process, not protect. He lived in shelters when he could, under bridges when he could not, in drainage pipes, abandoned buildings, the back seats of unlocked cars in junkyard lots. He learned which dumpsters behind which restaurants had the freshest food. He learned which churches left their basement doors unlocked on cold nights. He learned which adults were safe and which ones wanted things from homeless boys that no child should ever have to give. He learned to be invisible. And he was good at it. 2 years good. 2 years of surviving alone in a state that killed unprepared adults in winter. 2 years of being nobody. And now, at 10 years old, crouched in his water tunnel beneath the Stillwater Bridge, Danny Mercer watched the sky and knew that the worst night of his life was coming. The Halloween blizzard of 1991 was about to devour Minnesota, and Danny could feel it in his bones. 43 miles south, Marcus Stone was tucking his daughter into bed. Marcus Stone stood 6'4", 260 pounds, brown hair turning silver at the temples, arms that looked like they had been forged, not grown, a jaw carved from granite, hands that could crush a beer can flat without trying. The vice president of the Hells Angels, Duluth chapter. The kind of man who walked into a room and every conversation stopped. But right now, those crushing hands were attempting something far more delicate. They were braiding a 5-year-old girl's hair. "Daddy, you are pulling too hard." "Sorry, baby. Hold still. You said that 3 times already." Marcus gritted his teeth and tried again. The braid looked like something a bird might build during an earthquake. His massive fingers fumbled with strands of fine brown hair that seemed to have a personal vendetta against him. Sophie Stone watched him in the mirror with enormous blue eyes that held more wisdom than any 5-year-old had a right to possess. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby, it looks like a rope." Marcus stared at his creation. It did look like a rope, a poorly made rope, the kind of rope that would get you killed if you actually tried to use it. "Want me to fix it?" Sophie asked. "You are 5. You cannot braid your own hair. Grandma showed me." Sophie reached back and with tiny fingers dismantled his disaster in 3 seconds and rebuilt it into something beautiful in 10 more. "There, see?" Marcus stared. "How did you do that?" "I practiced, Daddy. That is how you get good at things. You practice." Marcus laughed. His daughter was 5 years old, and she was already smarter than he was. Had been since the day she was born. Had been since the moment she screamed her first breath into a delivery room that still smelled of her mother's blood. Hannah Stone, the only woman who had ever looked at Marcus and seen something other than a criminal. The only person who had ever made him believe he could be more than what the world expected. She had brown hair and green eyes, and a laugh that sounded like music playing from a room you could not quite find. She died giving birth to Sophie, hemorrhaged on the delivery table. Bled out while doctors scrambled and machines screamed, and Marcus stood in the hallway gripping a railing so hard the metal bent under his hands. They told him later that his heart stopped. 6 seconds. His body simply refused to exist in a world without Hannah in it. Then a newborn baby screamed from somewhere beyond the doors, and his heart kicked back to life. Not for himself, for her. He named her Sophie because Hannah had chosen the name 3 months before, had written it on a piece of paper, and stuck it to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a sunflower. Sophie. It means wisdom. And our girl is going to be the wisest person either of us has ever known. Hannah had been right. Sophie was wise. Wise and kind and brave and funny, and everything good in the world compressed into 45 pounds of brown curls and blue eyes. She was also dying. Congenital aortic valve defect. Diagnosed at 6 months old. The valve that controlled blood flow from her heart to her body was malformed. It worked. Barely. Like a door hanging from one hinge, every cold snap stressed it, every fever threatened it, every year it got a little weaker, a little more dangerous. Doctors said she would not see 12 without surgery. The surgery cost $75,000. Marcus had saved $31,000 in 4 years. Every dollar earned honestly, every penny a prayer. Not enough, never enough. Love you, Daddy. Love you more. Love you most. Their ritual. The last thing Hannah had started before she died. The last piece of her that lived in this house, in these words, in the space between a father and daughter who had lost everything except each other. Sleep tight, baby. Grandma is picking you up in the morning. You will be home by noon. Can we make cookies at Grandma's house? I think Grandma already has the ingredients ready. Chocolate chip and peanut butter. Is there any other kind? Sophie giggled. Marcus kissed her forehead, held his lips there for 3 seconds longer than necessary. He did this every night, counted the seconds, counted the heartbeats he could feel through her skull, counted every moment because the doctors had told him their daughter's moments were numbered. Good night, baby. Good night, Daddy. I love you most. She was asleep before he reached the door. Marcus stood in the hallway and pressed his forehead against the wall. Breathe. Just breathe. The way his therapist had taught him. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. The breathing pattern of a man trying to hold himself together. He checked the weather forecast on his phone. 4 to 6 inches starting tomorrow afternoon. Nothing serious. His mother would have Sophie home by noon, well before any snow. His mother, Ruth Stone, 71 years old, survived every Minnesota winter since Eisenhower. Buried a husband, buried one of her 3 sons, survived the blizzard of 1940 that killed 14 people in St. Louis County. Ruth Stone knew death. She had danced with it enough times to recognize its footsteps. Marcus almost called her. His hand hovered over the phone. Something felt wrong. Something in his gut had been churning all day. A feeling like standing on railroad tracks and hearing a hum that no one else could hear. What would he say? My bones feel strange? She would laugh at him, tell him to stop worrying, tell him Sophie would be fine. He put the phone down. This decision would haunt Marcus Stone for the rest of his life. 6 hours until impact. Danny's fingers worked automatically, stuffing newspaper into the gaps of his boots. 3 layers of the Duluth News-Tribune between his skin and cracked leather. The boots were stolen from a dead man 8 months ago. Found him under the overpass on Highway 61. Frozen solid, already gone. Danny had stood there for a long time, staring at the man's face, wondering if that was how his own story would end. Alone, frozen, unidentified. Then he took the boots. Because the dead do not need boots, and the living do. His mother had taught him the newspaper trick. Triple layered. It traps air. Air insulates. The difference between walking and crawling. The difference between frostbite and function. 5 hours until impact. Marcus kissed Sophie one more time. She stirred but did not wake. He pulled the blanket up to her chin and stood over her in the darkness, watching her chest rise and fall. Counting. Always counting. 4 hours until impact. Danny remembered his mother's face with painful clarity, the way she looked at him the night the cancer won. Her eyes already seeing somewhere else. Her voice a whisper. Everything will be okay, baby. He remembered his father's face. The man who stared at him for 22 days like Danny was the reason she was gone. The man who chose a bottle over his own son. The man who vanished without a word. 3 hours until impact. Ruth Stone called Marcus. Danny, I am not bringing Sophie tomorrow. What? Why not? What's wrong? The forecast is wrong, Raymond. Marcus paused. She only called him Raymond, his middle name, when she was serious. Mom, the forecast says 4 to 6 inches starting in the afternoon. Ruth's voice carried iron. My niece says it is wrong. The birds say it is wrong. There has not been a single chickadee at the feeder all morning. Marcus went silent. He knew what that meant. When the birds disappeared, something was coming that even creatures without weather reports could sense. How bad? Bad. Could be a day. Could be 2. I am not putting her in that car. Okay, keep her safe, Mom. I always do. She hung up. Marcus stood in his kitchen holding a dead phone. His gut was screaming. Every instinct he had developed in 20 years of riding, 20 years of reading roads and weather and trouble, every instinct told him something was wrong. But his mother had Sophie. Ruth Stone had survived everything. Ruth Stone was the strongest person he had ever known. He told himself it would be fine. 2 hours until impact. Danny crawled to the edge of his tunnel and looked at the sky. The clouds were stacking in layers like a funeral shroud. Not normal storm clouds. Something else entirely. Something alive. Something hungry. The temperature was dropping faster than he had ever felt. Faster than physics should allow. This was not a storm. This was the end of the world, and it was coming early. 1 hour until impact. Danny whispered the only prayer he still believed in. Just let me live through this. Just one more night, please. The sky did not answer. The sky never answered. But 43 miles south, A little girl named Sophie was dreaming of her mother, completely unaware that a homeless boy she had never met was about to become the only thing standing between her and death. The first snowflakes began to fall 6 hours early, and somewhere in those clouds, in that white death rushing toward Minnesota, Danny Mercer's fate was waiting. If you cannot stand watching children forgotten by the system, write in the comments, "Every child deserves a home." Let us remind ourselves what matters. That's part 1, approximately 3,200 words. Ready for part 2 on your command. Ruth Stone felt it in her knee before she felt it in the air. Not the usual ache, not the dull throb that came with every October cold snap. This was a shriek, a howl inside the bone. Pain she had felt only twice before in her life, both times before storms that killed people. She stood at the kitchen window and watched the sky. Fat, white flakes tumbled from clouds the color of wet cement. Heavy flakes. Determined flakes. The kind that meant business. "Grandma, look!" Snow. Sophie pressed her face against the glass. Her breath fogged the surface, and she drew a smiley face in the condensation with one small finger. "Can we play in it?" "Not today, baby. Come away from the window." "But it is so pretty. It looks like someone is shaking a snow globe." Ruth pulled Sophie gently from the glass. The pain in her knee was getting worse. Screaming now. Screaming the way it had screamed in 1975, before the storm that collapsed the gymnasium roof in 2 harbors and killed 3 people. Screaming the way it had screamed in 1983, before the ice storm that took out power for 6 days and froze 2 elderly couples in their homes. Ruth had buried enough people to know when death was walking toward her house. She moved to the phone and dialed. Marcus answered on the 3rd ring. "Raymond, I changed my mind. I am not waiting this out. I am bringing her home now." "Mom, you just told me to wait. The roads are fine. You said you would keep her." "That was 3 hours ago. It is moving faster than I thought. My knee is screaming. The birds are gone. Not just the chickadees. Everything. Even the crows. When crows leave, Ruth, you leave." Marcus went quiet. Ruth could hear him breathing. The breathing of a father calculating risk. The breathing of a man whose daughter's heartbeats were numbered. "How bad are the roads?" Ruth looked outside. The snow was falling harder now. Sideways. The wind had picked up from nothing to a steady moan in the last 20 minutes. "I have driven through worse. I will take it slow. We will be there in 2 hours." "Mom." 2 hours, Raymond. Then she is in your arms, and I will sleep better knowing she is with you." Another pause. Longer this time. The silence of a man fighting his own instincts. "Okay, drive slow. Call me when you pass the county line." "I will. Stop worrying. I have been driving these roads since before you were born." "That is what worries me." Ruth laughed. "Smart mouth. You got that from your father. I love you." "Love you too, Mom. Be safe." Ruth hung up and turned to Sophie. "Come on, sweetheart, let us get you bundled up. We are going to see Daddy." Sophie's face lit up. She threw her arms in the air. "Yes, Daddy. Can we stop for hot chocolate on the way?" "We will see. Let me get the car warmed up first." Ruth grabbed her keys, her coat, her purse. She pulled on the heavy boots she kept by the door. She wrapped Sophie in a winter jacket, a scarf, mittens, a hat that made her look like a small pink marshmallow. She tucked 2 quilts into her arms. "Why do I need blankets? We have a heater." "Because your grandma believes in being prepared." "Prepared for what?" "For everything, baby. Always for everything." They walked to the car, Ruth's 1984 Buick LeSabre, cream-colored, 247,000 miles, rust along the wheel wells, an engine that sounded like an old man clearing his throat, but it ran. It had always run, through every winter, every storm, every season of Ruth's life since Ronald Reagan's first term. Ruth buckled Sophie into the back seat, wrapped the quilts around her, turned the heater to full blast, pulled out of the driveway onto County Road 7. The first 10 miles were fine, snow falling steady but manageable, visibility decent. Ruth kept both hands on the wheel and her speed at 35. Sophie sang in the back seat, made up songs about snowflakes and cookies, and a daddy who braided hair like bird nests. Then the world changed. It happened fast. So fast that Ruth's 71 years of Minnesota experience could not process it. One moment she could see the road. The next moment the road was gone. The sky was gone. Everything was gone. White. Solid white. Like someone had thrown a sheet over the windshield. The wind hit the car like a freight train. The Buick shuddered. Ruth gripped the wheel and felt the tires lose purchase. The car slid left. She corrected. It slid right. She corrected again. Grandma? It is okay, baby. Just a gust. But it was not a gust. The wind kept coming. 60 miles an hour. 70. The snow was not falling anymore. It was flying. Horizontal. Sheets of white screaming across the road like ghosts. Ruth could not see 10 feet in front of the car. She slowed to 15. Then 10. Then 5. Her headlights did nothing. The snow swallowed the light and threw back nothing but white. Grandma, I am scared. I know, baby, but Grandma has got this. We are going to be just fine. Ruth's hands were shaking, not from cold, from fear. The kind of fear she had not felt since 1975, when she watched that gymnasium roof bow inward and knew what was coming. She should pull over. She knew she should pull over, but there was nowhere to pull over. County Road 7 was a 2-lane ribbon through nothing. No shoulders, no guardrails, ditches on both sides that dropped 4 feet into frozen farmland. She pressed on, 5 miles an hour, creeping through the white. The car hit something. Ruth did not see it. A branch, a drift. Something in the road that should not have been there. The front left tire caught it and jerked the wheel out of her hands. The Buick lurched sideways. Ruth grabbed the wheel and pulled, but the car was already sliding, already falling. The ditch swallowed them nose first. The impact threw Ruth forward. Her forehead hit the steering wheel. Stars exploded behind her eyes. She heard Sophie scream, heard the quilts rustle, heard the engine cough and die. Then silence. Grandma, Grandma, Grandma. Sophie's voice came from far away, from the bottom of a well. Ruth tried to open her eyes, but the darkness was pulling her down. Warm darkness, comfortable darkness. Grandma, please wake up. Ruth's head lolled against the steering wheel. Blood ran from a cut above her left eye. She could feel it, warm on her cold skin. Her last conscious thought was not about herself. Sophie, my Sophie. Someone help my Sophie. Then nothing. Sophie sat in the back seat and watched her grandmother's chest rise and fall. Rise and fall. Slow. Too slow. The car was tilted at a sharp angle. The heater was dead. The engine was dead. The lights were dead. The only light came from the snow pressing against the windows. A pale gray glow that made everything look like a dream. Sophie pulled the quilts tighter. Her chest was hurting. Not the outside kind of hurt, the inside kind. The kind that Daddy and the doctors always worried about. The kind that made machines beat fast and nurses run. It is okay, she said it out loud because the silence was too big. It is okay. Daddy will come. Daddy always comes. But Daddy did not know where she was. Nobody knew where she was. Nobody knew that a 5-year-old girl with a broken heart was sitting in a dead car in a ditch in the middle of the worst storm in 50 years. Sophie started to cry. Quiet tears at first, then louder, then sobs that shook her whole body and made her chest hurt worse. The cold crept in, slowly at first, then faster. The quilts were not enough. The car was becoming a refrigerator, a freezer, a coffin. Sophie's teeth started chattering. Her fingers turned white. Her toes went numb. She tried to wake her grandmother again, shook her arm, called her name, begged. Ruth did not move. Ruth was somewhere far away, somewhere warm and silent where granddaughters' voices could not reach. Sophie pressed herself against the back seat and tried to make herself small, small and warm, the way she did when she crawled into Daddy's lap during thunderstorms. But Daddy was not here. Nobody was here. My chest hurts. She whispered it to nobody. My chest really hurts. The cold was doing something to her heart. She could feel it. A fluttering, a skipping, like a bird trapped inside her rib cage, beating its wings against the bars. Sophie closed her eyes. She thought about Daddy, about his big hands braiding her hair, about his laugh, about the way he held her like she was made of glass and gold and everything precious in the world. She thought about Mommy, the Mommy she had never met but knew from photographs and stories, and the way Daddy's voice changed when he talked about her. Soft, reverent, like he was praying. I want my Daddy. Sophie said it to the empty car, to the storm, to God if he was listening. Please, I want my Daddy. Nobody answered. 23 miles north, Danny Mercer was about to wake from a nightmare. He was dreaming of fire, his mother reaching for him through smoke, her voice calling his name as flames swallowed her whole. He had this dream most nights. It was almost familiar, almost comforting in its predictability. But tonight the dream shifted. Tonight his mother was not in the fire. Tonight a little girl was burning, not in flames, in ice. A girl made of snow and silence, melting in his arms while he screamed for help that never came. Her eyes were blue, her hair was brown. She was asking him something, asking him over and over and over. Promise me, promise me, promise me. Danny woke gasping. His body was rigid. His hands were claws gripping the sleeping bag. His breath came out in clouds so thick he could barely see through them. Something was wrong. The storm had arrived. Not the storm the meteorologist predicted. Something else entirely. Something alive. Something hungry. Danny crawled toward the tunnel entrance and punched through the wall of snow, blocking his exit. The cold hit him like a fist to the chest. 42 below zero with wind chill. Temperature that could kill and expose human in under 45 minutes. He could not see 5 feet in front of him. For a long moment, he considered crawling back into the tunnel, back into the darkness. At least in the darkness, he was warm. At least in the darkness, he could pretend his mother was still alive. At least in the darkness, nothing could hurt him. But Danny Mercer had not survived 3 years on the streets by hiding. He started walking. He did not know where he was going, could not see stars, could not find any landmark. He just walked, one foot in front of the other. The rhythm of survival that had kept him alive when everything else had tried to kill him. The wind tore at his clothes. The snow drove into his face like needles. His newspaper-stuffed boots punched through drifts that came up to his thighs. Every step was a battle. Every breath was a victory. After what felt like hours, he saw it, a shape in the white, dark against the endless pale. A car, sitting in a ditch at a sharp angle, front end buried in a snowbank. Thin gray smoke rising from under the hood, torn apart by the wind as soon as it appeared. Danny's first thought was shelter. A car meant getting out of the wind. Getting out of the wind meant surviving another hour. His second thought was danger. Cars in ditches could mean anything. Drunks, criminals, people who might hurt a homeless boy. He approached carefully, circled to the driver's side, wiped the snow from the window with his sleeve. Inside, slumped against the steering wheel, was an old woman. Gray hair, closed eyes, blood on her forehead. Her chest moved in the smallest rise and fall. Alive. Barely. Then he heard it, a voice, small, terrified, coming from the back seat. Hello? Is someone there? Please help, please. My grandma will not wake up, and I am really cold, and my chest hurts, and I do not know what to do. Please, is someone there? Danny's heart stopped. There was a child in that car. I am here. He shouted it, but the wind stole his words, shredded them, scattered them into the white. He moved to the rear window, wiped the snow, pressed his face against the glass. Inside, huddled under quilts, was a girl. Small, 5, maybe. Brown curls escaping from under a pink hat. Face pale as death. Lips turning blue. Eyes enormous and terrified and locked directly onto his. She saw him. Nobody had looked directly at Danny Mercer in 2 years. He had become invisible, a ghost, a nothing. But this girl saw him. Through the glass, through the storm, through everything, she saw him. And something inside Danny broke open. He looked at his boots, cracked leather, heavy heel. He pulled off his left boot. The cold sliced into his foot like a blade. He gripped the boot by the toe, raised it over his head, and slammed the heel into the window. The glass cracked. He hit it again, again, again. On the fourth strike, the window shattered inward. Cold air rushed in. The girl cried out, "It is okay. I am going to help you. What is your name?" "Sophie." Her teeth were chattering so hard she could barely form the word. "Hi, Sophie. I am Danny. Can you move? My chest hurts, really bad, like someone is squeezing it." Danny's blood went cold. Chest pain in a child this young, in cold this severe. He did not know the medical term. He did not need to. He knew what dying looked like. He looked at the old woman in the front seat, still breathing, still alive. He reached through the shattered window and piled every quilt, every coat, every scrap of fabric he could find around her body. It was not enough. Nothing was enough. But it was something. He could not carry two people, could not lift one adult. But he could carry a child. The nearest hospital was in Duluth, St. Mary's. How far? He did not know exactly. Miles, many miles. Through a blizzard that was killing people across the state. It was impossible, absolutely impossible. But staying in this car meant dying, both of them. Sophie's heart was failing in the cold. Danny could see it in her color, in her breathing, in the way her hands trembled with something deeper than shivering. "Sophie, I need you to listen to me. Your grandma is hurt, but she is going to be okay. Help will come for her. Right now I need to get you somewhere warm. Can you hold on to my back? Like a piggyback ride?" Sophie stared at him, 5 years old, freezing, chest failing, looking at a stranger through a broken window in the middle of a storm that wanted to kill them both. "You are going to carry me? In this?" "Yes, but it is so far." "I have walked farther." Danny lied. "This is nothing." Sophie studied his face the way children do, without pretense, without social filters, reading truth the way adults have forgotten how to read. "You are lying," she said it matter-of-factly. "You have not walked farther." Danny almost smiled. "Maybe not, but I am going to walk this far tonight. I need you to hold on tight. Can you do that?" Sophie looked at her grandmother. Unconscious, bleeding, unreachable. She looked back at Danny, at this stranger with old boots and newspaper stuffed in his collar, and eyes that looked like they had seen too much for someone so young. "Promise me," Sophie's voice cracked. "Promise you will not leave me." Danny thought about his father, the morning he woke up to an empty trailer, the promise that was never made because his father had not even cared enough to lie. He thought about his mother. "Everything will be okay, baby." The promise made with love and broken by death. He thought about every adult who had ever stood over him and said the words, "You will be fine. We will take care of you. Do not worry." Lies, all of them, every single one. But this was different. This was not a promise to keep for years. This was not a promise to keep forever. This was a promise to keep for hours, for miles, for one terrible night. "I promise." Danny said it and meant it more than he had ever meant anything. "I will never leave you." Sophie reached out her arms. Danny lifted her through the broken window. She weighed almost nothing. 45 pounds of dying child. He settled her onto his back, her arms wrapped around his neck, her legs cinched around his waist, her face pressed into his shoulder. She was ice cold against his body. Her heartbeat was wrong. He could feel it through her chest pressed against his back. Too fast, then too slow, then skipping, like a record player bumping over scratches. Danny turned toward the east, toward Duluth, toward a hospital he could not see, toward a distance he could not measure, into a storm that wanted to kill them both. He took his first step, 12 miles, through the worst blizzard in 50 years, with a stranger's dying daughter on his back. Danny Mercer did not know what this promise would cost him. He was about to find out. If you are holding your breath right now, hit that like button. You are not alone. Mile 1 was a lie. Danny would remember that later. He would remember thinking, this is not so bad. I can do this. The way a man walking into quicksand thinks the ground feels fine for the first 3 steps. The weight on his back was nothing. Sophie had wrapped herself around him tight, arms locked around his neck, legs cinched at his waist. A 45-pound girl clinging to him like he was the last solid thing left in the universe. The wind hit from the north. Danny leaned into it and walked, one foot punching through the snow, then the other. Again. The rhythm of survival that had carried him through 3 years of streets and shelters and cold nights under bridges. Sophie's breath was warm against his neck, the only warmth left anywhere. The only proof that the world had not frozen completely solid. Danny, yeah, are we going to die? The question came out calm, quiet, the voice of a 5-year-old who had spent her entire life knowing that her heart could stop at any moment. A child who understood death better than most adults, because death had been sitting in the room at every doctor's appointment since she was 6 months old. No, we are not going to die. How do you know? Because I promised I would not leave you, and I cannot keep that promise if I am dead. A pause, then a sound Danny did not expect. A laugh, small and broken and beautiful. That is weird logic. Weird logic is still logic. My daddy says that too. Danny adjusted her weight on his back. Tell me about your daddy. He is big, really, really big, like a bear, and he has a motorcycle and tattoos everywhere, and he wears leather all the time, and people cross the street when they see him coming. He sounds scary. He is not. He is the nicest person in the whole world. He braids my hair every morning. Did you know boys can braid hair? I did not know that. Neither did he. He learned from YouTube. His first braids look like bird nests. Grandma laughed so hard she spit out her coffee. Danny laughed. He actually laughed. This dying girl on his back, in the middle of a blizzard that was killing people across the state, was making him laugh. He sounds like a good dad. He is the best dad. He makes me pancakes shaped like motorcycles. And when I have bad dreams, he sits on my bed and sings. He cannot sing at all. It is terrible, but I love it. Danny's throat tightened. He kept walking. Do you have a daddy, Danny? The warmth left his body. Not from the cold, from something deeper. I used to. Where did he go? I do not know. He did not tell you? No. Sophie was quiet for a moment. That is really mean. Yeah, it was. My daddy would never do that. He promised he would always be there. He promised on Mommy's grave. Your mommy? She died when I was a baby. I do not remember her, but Daddy shows me pictures and tells me stories about her every night. She was really pretty. She had brown hair like me, and green eyes, and she laughed a lot. Daddy says her laugh was like music. Danny did not know what to say. He had spent 3 years being angry at the universe for taking his mother, but at least he had 7 years of her. 7 years of goodnight kisses and lullabies and the sound of her voice singing in the church choir. Sophie had nothing but photographs in a father's stories, and yet she was not angry, not bitter. She loved her daddy and found joy in bird nest braids and motorcycle pancakes and terrible singing in the dark. Danny had spent 3 years learning to survive. Maybe this 5-year-old could teach him something about learning to live. Mile 2. Danny's feet went numb. He had been expecting it. The newspaper in his boots had soaked through before the first mile was done. The cold crept in gradually. Toes first, then ankles, then a solid block of nothing from the knees down. He could not feel his steps anymore, could only watch his legs punch through the snow and trust that they would keep working. Danny, yeah, boss, I am really cold. The words drove a spike of fear straight through his chest. He reached back with one hand and touched her cheek. Her skin was cold. Not cool, cold. the temperature of meat in a refrigerator. I know, Sophie, but moving keeps us warm. We have to keep moving. Okay, but her arms around his neck were looser now. Her grip on his waist was slipping, and Danny remembered something he had overheard at a shelter 2 winters ago. A paramedic talking to a nurse. When a hypothermic person stops shivering, it means their body has given up trying to generate heat. It means the core temperature is dropping past the point of recovery. Sophie had stopped shivering. Danny walked faster. Mile 3. Danny started crying. He did not notice at first. The tears froze on his cheeks almost instantly, but the sobs shook his chest, stole his breath, made each step harder than the last. He was crying for Sophie, whose heart was failing in the cold. He was crying for himself, whose body was shutting down one system at a time. He was crying for his mother, who had promised everything would be okay, and then died at 4:17 in the morning while her son held her hand. He was crying because he was 10 years old, and he was going to die in a snowstorm carrying a stranger's child, and nobody would ever know. Nobody would ever find them. They would be 2 frozen bodies in a field somewhere, discovered in spring when the snow melted, and the news would run a story for one day, and the world would forget. The tears kept coming. He could not stop them, did not try, but his feet kept moving. If you believe this boy deserves everything after what he is about to do, write "Danny is a hero" in the comments. Show him some respect. Mile 4. Danny saw his mother. She stood in the snow ahead of him, clear as day, blonde hair, blue dress. The dress she wore to church every Sunday. The dress she was wearing the last time he saw her alive, and smiling, and whole. Baby. Her voice was warm, soft, the voice that had sung him to sleep 1,000 times. You are so tired. Why do you not rest? I cannot, Mama. I promised. Promises get broken, baby. You know that better than anyone. Not this one. Laura tilted her head, the way she used to when Danny said something that surprised her. Why is this one different? Because she is counting on me. Because no one else is coming. Because if I stop, she dies. His mother's eyes were sad, full of love and sadness and something else. Pride, maybe, or grief, or both. Is she worth dying for? A stranger's child? Danny thought about the question, really thought about it. The cold gave him plenty of time to think. Too much time. Enough time to examine every corner of the question and find the answer hiding in the place he least expected. Yeah, she is. Why? Because someone should have been worth dying for me, and no one was. Nobody came for me, Mama. When Daddy left, when the Burtons hurt me, when I was sleeping in drainage pipes and eating from dumpsters, nobody came. I was not worth it to anyone. Danny's voice cracked. I will not let her feel that. Not tonight, not ever. His mother's image flickered. The snow tore at her edges. Her smile turned sad and fierce and proud, all at the same time. I came for you, baby. Every night, every dream. I never left. I know, Mama, I know. I am so proud of you. Do you hear me? I am so proud. Then she faded. The snow swallowed her whole. Danny walked through the space where she had been and did not look back. He was still crying, but his feet were still moving. Mile 5. Danny fell for the first time. His legs stopped without warning. One moment he was walking, the next he was face down in the snow, Sophie's weight driving him deeper into the white. The impact knocked the breath from his lungs. Snow filled his mouth, his nose, his eyes. The cold embraced him, whispered to him, promised him rest, sleep, an end to the pain. It would be so easy to stay down, so easy to close his eyes, so easy to let the storm win. Danny. Sophie's voice came from above him, weak, fading, but there. Danny, get up. Cannot. You promised. 2 words. 2 words from a 5-year-old girl who was dying on his back. 2 words that hit harder than the wind, harder than the cold, harder than 3 years of streets and hunger and loneliness. You promised. Danny put his hands in the snow. He pushed. His body screamed. Every muscle, every joint, every cell screamed at him to stop. He pushed harder. And somehow, impossibly, Danny Mercer got back to his feet. Good. Sophie whispered it into his shoulder. Good job, Danny. He laughed. Or sobbed. He could not tell the difference anymore. They had become the same sound. Thanks, boss. Let us keep moving. Then Sophie said something that would echo in Danny's mind for the rest of his life. I believe you. What? You said we would not die. She pressed her face harder into his shoulder. I believe you. Danny's throat closed. This girl, this impossible, stubborn, dying girl, trusted him completely. Put her life in his hands without hesitation. Believed him when he said they would survive. When every piece of evidence in the universe said otherwise. He could not fail her. He squared his shoulders, adjusted her weight, and walked into the white void. Mile 6. Danny fell again. The third time. He got up. Fell at mile 6.5. Got up. His legs were operating on something beyond muscle, beyond willpower, beyond anything he could name. Sophie had gone quiet. Her breathing was shallow. Her arms were barely holding on. Danny kept one hand behind his back, pressing her body against his, keeping her from sliding off. Danny. Yeah, boss, still here. My chest hurts, really bad. I know, we are almost there. You are lying again. Maybe a little. Danny. Yeah, tell me about your mama. The real stuff, not the sad stuff, the good stuff. Danny walked, and for the first time in 3 years, he let himself remember the good things. Not the cancer, not the blood in the napkins, not the last night, the good things. She sang, all the time, in the kitchen, in the car, in the shower. She could not cook to save her life, burned everything. One time she set the smoke alarm off making toast. Toast, Sophie, how do you burn toast? Sophie made a sound that might have been a laugh, might have been a cough. Danny kept talking. She read to me every night, did all the voices. She did this pirate voice that was so bad it was good. And every Sunday she sang in the church choir, and I would sit in the third row and pretend she was singing just for me. And she would look at me right in the middle of the song and wink, like we had a secret nobody else knew. Danny's voice was breaking apart, but he kept going, because Sophie needed to hear it, because he needed to say it. And she smelled like vanilla, always, even at the end. Even when everything else was wrong, she still smelled like vanilla. She sounds nice. She was the best person I ever knew. Like my mommy. Yeah, like your mommy. Danny, when we get home, will you tell my daddy about your mama? He would like her. I think they would be friends. Danny could not speak, could not form words around the thing lodged in his throat. Yeah, he finally managed. Yeah, I will tell him. Mile 7, mile 8. Danny stopped counting falls. His body remembered. 7 falls, 9, 12, 15. Each one harder to come back from. Each time he lay in the snow a little longer before finding the strength to rise. Sophie drifted in and out of consciousness. Her breathing was wrong, too slow, too shallow, the pauses between breaths growing longer. Her heart was failing. Danny could feel it, the irregular flutter against his back, the rhythm that should have been steady breaking apart like a clock running out of springs. He started talking to keep her awake, told her everything, about the trailer where he grew up, about his mother's garden, about the day his father left and the silence that followed, about the Burtons in the fields and the closet under the stairs, about running away in the dark, about learning to be invisible. He had never told anyone these things, had kept them locked inside a vault in his chest where they could not hurt anyone else. But now, carrying this girl through the longest night of his life, the vault cracked open and everything spilled out. Sophie listened. When she was conscious, she listened with the total attention that only children possess. And in the spaces between Danny's words, she whispered things back. You are not invisible, Danny. I can see you. 4 words. 4 words from a 5-year-old girl that dismantled 3 years of armor in a single breath. Mile 9. Sophie stirred against his back. Her voice was barely a whisper now, less than a whisper, a breath with shape. Danny. Yeah, boss. Will you be my brother? The question came from nowhere, hit him harder than the wind, harder than every fall, harder than anything the storm had thrown at him. What? When we get home. Will you be my brother? I always wanted a brother, and you are nice, and you save me, and you tell good stories about your mama. Danny could not speak. The words jammed in his throat, blocked by something that felt like tears and laughter and hope all tangled together into a knot he could not undo. Yeah, he choked it out. Yeah, Sophie, I will be your brother. Promise? I promise. She smiled against his shoulder. He could feel it, even through the cold and the exhaustion and the layers and the pain. He could feel a 5-year-old girl smile. Good. I am holding you to that. Then her body went limp, unconscious again, but still breathing, still alive. Finally, walked faster. Mile 10. Danny saw lights. He thought he was hallucinating again. The cold could do that. When hypothermia set in deep enough, people saw things that were not there. Warm places, dead relatives, lights in the darkness that led nowhere. But these lights did not disappear. They flickered in the distance. Yellow, warm, the kind of lights that meant buildings, people, life. Sophie, Sophie, wake up! I see lights! No response. Sophie had stopped responding 2 miles ago. Her breathing was barely detectable, a thin thread connecting her to the living world, fraying with every second. Danny aimed himself at the lights and walked. Mile 11. Danny fell for the 21st time. He lay in the snow, Sophie's weight pinning him down. His arms would not move. His legs would not move. His lungs could barely pull in enough air to keep him conscious. He could see the hospital, could see the emergency room entrance, the sliding doors, the ambulances, the glow of fluorescent lights promising warmth and safety and survival. Maybe 300 yards away. 300 yards might as well have been 300 miles. Danny was done. He had given everything, every ounce of strength, every shred of willpower, every molecule of determination a 10-year-old body could produce. And it was not enough. 300 yards. That was how close they had come. That was how close Sophie had come to surviving. I am sorry. Danny thought it because he could not say it. I am sorry, Sophie. I am sorry, Mama. I am sorry I made a promise I could not keep. He closed his eyes. The cold wrapped around him. Warm now. The warmth that came before the end. The warmth that said, stop fighting, it is over, let go. Then Sophie spoke. Her voice was a ghost, a whisper inside a whisper, the faintest breath of sound that should not have been possible from a body that far gone. Danny, please do not stop. I can see the lights. We are so close. Danny opened his eyes. The lights were still there, still flickering, still waiting. 300 yards. He had walked 12 miles through a blizzard with a dying child on his back. He had fallen 21 times and gotten up 21 times. He had survived things that should have killed him 10 times over. 300 yards was nothing. 300 yards was everything. Danny used his forearms because his fingers would not work. He pushed. His body screamed in protest. He pushed harder. Come on, come on, come on. His knees found purchase. He rose, wobbling, swaying, barely human anymore, but standing. Good job. Sophie breathed it into his neck. I knew you could do it. 200 yards. Danny fell again. The 22nd time. He got up. The 22nd time. 100 yards. His vision was going gray at the edges. His body was shutting down organ by organ. He could feel himself dying with every step. He kept walking. 50 yards. The emergency room doors were right there. 20 yards. Danny's knees buckled. He staggered, caught himself, staggered again. 10 yards. 5. He reached the entrance. The automatic doors did not open. The sensors were frozen or broken or unable to detect the snow-covered creature that used to be a boy. Danny turned around, pressed his back against the glass, slid down until he was sitting on the concrete. Sophie slipped off his back, landed beside him. Still breathing, still alive. Danny raised his frozen fist and pounded on the glass. Once, twice, 3 times. The doors opened from inside. A nurse stood there. Her face went white. Oh my God. Her name is Sophie. Danny's voice barely worked, cracked and broken and fading. Her grandma is in a car on County Road 7, mile marker 23. She has a heart condition. She needs help right now. The nurse stared at him, at Sophie, at the trail of frozen footprints leading from the darkness behind them, a trail that stretched into the storm and disappeared into the white. Did you carry her here? Danny did not answer. The world was going gray, then black, then nothing. The last thing he heard before consciousness fled was Sophie's voice, weak, broken, but alive. He promised he would not leave me, and he did not. Danny collapsed on the emergency room floor. His body hit the tile and did not move. The nurses rushed forward. 2 of them grabbed Sophie. 2 more dropped beside Danny. Someone was shouting for a gurney. Someone was shouting for blankets. Someone was shouting for a doctor. And outside the storm howled on, indifferent, eternal, unaware that a 10-year-old boy had just walked 12 miles to its heart and won. If you are crying right now, hit that like button. You are not alone. If you believe this kind of love should spread, send this video to someone who needs a reminder that miracles are real. The nurses found the damage when they cut off his boots. His feet were white, not pale, not pink, white. The color of tissue that had been frozen solid. The color of meat left in a freezer too long. The color of death creeping in from the edges, working its way toward the center, claiming everything it touched. Get the warming blankets, all of them, now. They worked on him for 3 hours, warming his core temperature gradually because warming too fast could stop his heart. Treating the frostbite on his feet, his hands, his nose, his ears, his cheeks. Pumping fluids into veins that had nearly collapsed from dehydration. Feeding nutrients into a body that had been running on nothing for months. His temperature when he arrived was 27 degrees Celsius. Normal was 37. He had been 10 degrees from death. The attending physician, a woman named Dr. Rivera, who had practiced emergency medicine for 22 years, stood over his chart and shook her head. He should have died at mile 6. His body weight, his age, his nutritional state, the wind chill, the exposure time. None of this math adds up. He should not be alive. But he was alive, barely, hovering on a tightrope between this world and whatever came next. His body had simply refused to stop, had overridden every signal, every shutdown command, every biological imperative that said, enough, lie down, let go. Something had kept him walking when walking was impossible. A promise. In the room next door, Sophie Stone was fighting her own war. The cold had stressed her damaged aortic valve past the breaking point. The arrhythmia that had started in the car had become a full cardiac event by the time she reached the emergency room. Her heart was not beating. It was stuttering, lurching, an engine misfiring on every cylinder. The trauma team hit her with everything: warming protocols, cardiac stabilization, a cocktail of medications that would have looked absurd for an adult patient, let alone a 5-year-old girl who weighed 45 pounds. We are losing her rhythm. Come on, Sophie. Come on, baby. Stay with us. For 11 minutes, Sophie Stone's heart could not decide whether it wanted to keep going. 11 minutes of machines screaming and nurses shouting and Dr. Rivera's hands working with a precision that came from 2 decades of refusing to let children die on her watch. Then, at 2:47 in the morning, Sophie's heart found its rhythm. Weak, irregular, but steady enough, alive enough. She was stable, critical, but stable, breathing on her own, heart limping along on medication, and stubbornness and whatever force had kept her alive on a 10-year-old boy's back for 12 miles through hell. And on County Road 7, mile marker 23, a rescue team found Ruth Stone. She was unconscious but alive, wrapped in every quilt, every coat, every scrap of fabric that a homeless boy had been able to find in her car. He had piled them around her body with the care of someone who understood that warmth was the difference between living and dying. Someone who had spent 3 years learning that lesson the hard way. Ruth would survive. Concussion, mild hypothermia, bruised ribs from the steering wheel. She would spend 4 days in the hospital and walk out under her own power, complaining about the food and demanding to see her granddaughter. They would all survive, every single one of them, because of one 10-year-old boy who refused to break his promise. But Danny did not know any of this. Danny was dreaming. In the dream, he was walking through snow, but this time he was not alone. His mother walked beside him, blonde hair catching light that should not exist in a blizzard. Sophie walked on his other side, holding his hand, and ahead of them, to the white, he could see something golden, warm, safe. "What is that place?" Danny asked. "That is where you are going, baby." His mother's voice was clear, strong, the voice from before the sickness. "But I do not have a home." His mother smiled. "You will." Then she faded. The snow faded. Everything faded into white, and Danny slept. Marcus Stone got the call at 3:47 in the morning. He had not slept, could not sleep. Something had been wrong all night. A feeling in his gut that would not quiet. A vibration in his bones like standing too close to a highway when a semi passes. He had paced the house for hours, checked his phone every 3 minutes, called his mother's number 11 times. No answer. Called again. No answer. Called again. The phone rang and Marcus grabbed it before the first ring finished. "Mr. Stone, this is St. Mary's Hospital in Duluth." Marcus stopped breathing. "Your mother was found unconscious in her vehicle on County Road 7. She is stable, but being treated for hypothermia and a head injury. And my daughter..." Marcus could barely form the words. His throat had closed to the width of a straw. "Sophie, where is Sophie?" "Your daughter is in our pediatric intensive care unit. She experienced a cardiac event due to severe hypothermia. She is critical, but stable." Marcus was already moving. Keys off the counter, jacket off the hook, boots on, helmet in hand, already running for the garage. How did she get there? The words came out hard, desperate. "The hospital is 35 miles from my mother's house. How did a 5-year-old girl with a heart condition end up in your emergency room?" A pause on the line, the kind of pause that precedes information too strange to deliver without preparation. "A boy carried her, Mr. Stone. A child. He walked through the blizzard with your daughter on his back. We do not know exactly how far. We do not know who he is. He collapsed before we could get his full name. Your daughter says his name is Danny." Marcus's hand froze on the garage door handle. His entire body locked. "A boy?" "Yes, sir. Maybe 10 or 11 years old. Severe frostbite on both feet, both hands, parts of his face. Hypothermia. Malnutrition. He should be dead, frankly. The doctors have never seen anything like it." "Where is he now?" "Being treated. But Mr. Stone, there is something else. When your daughter regained consciousness, she asked for him immediately. She said his name is Danny. She said he promised not to leave her. She said he is her brother." Marcus's legs nearly buckled. He pressed his forehead against the cold metal of the garage door and breathed. A child. A boy. Someone's son had carried his daughter through a blizzard that was killing people across the state. Had walked through hell itself to save a girl he had never met. "I am on my way. Mr. Stone, the roads are extremely dangerous. We strongly recommend waiting until..." "I am on my way." He hung up, threw open the garage door. The storm was still raging, snow piled 3 feet high, wind that could knock a grown man sideways, temperature that could kill in minutes. Marcus did not care. He mounted his Harley Davidson, kicked it to life. The engine roared in the darkness like an animal waking from a bad dream. And Marcus Stone, vice president of the Hells Angels Duluth chapter, rode into the White Death. It took him 4 hours. 4 hours of fighting through snowdrifts that buried his front wheel. 4 hours of wind trying to throw him off the road. 4 hours of cold so brutal he lost feeling in his hands by the second hour and his feet by the third. He crashed twice, got up twice, kept riding, because his daughter was alive. And somewhere in that hospital was a boy who had made that possible. Marcus Hammerstone had debts. He had made mistakes. He had done things in his life that he was not proud of, but he had never owed anyone what he owed this child. And Marcus Stone always paid his debts. He burst through the hospital doors at 8:15 in the morning, covered in snow, half frozen, 6'4" and 260 pounds of father who looked like death walking. The nurses tried to stop him, tried to tell him he needed medical attention himself. He pushed past every one of them. "My daughter! Where is my daughter?" They pointed. He ran. Sophie was in a bed too big for her small body, surrounded by machines and tubes and monitors that beeped with every heartbeat. Her eyes were closed. Her face was pale, but her chest was rising and falling, alive. Marcus fell to his knees beside her bed, put his face in his hands, and for the first time in 17 years, since the day Hannah died on a delivery table and his heart stopped for 6 seconds, Marcus Hammerstone cried. Not quiet tears, not dignified, controlled grief. He wept, shoulders shaking, sounds coming from his chest that he did not recognize as his own. The sounds of a man who had almost lost the only thing left in the world that mattered. Daddy. The small voice made him look up. Sophie's eyes were open, tired, weak, but open. And the first words out of her mouth were not about herself. "Daddy, you have to find the boy." "I know, sweetheart. His name is Danny. He carried me. He promised not to leave me, and he did not. He fell down so many times, Daddy, so many times. But he always got back up, every single time." Her voice was breaking, tears running down her pale cheeks. "Daddy, you have to find him. He is out there somewhere. He is alone. He thinks nobody wants him. He told me. He said nobody ever came for him. You have to find him. Promise me." Marcus took his daughter's hand, so small in his, so fragile, still here because a stranger walked 12 miles through a killing storm. "I will find him, Sophie. I swear to you." "Promise." "I promise." Sophie smiled, the same smile she had given Danny in the snow, the smile that said, "I believe you." "Good." She closed her eyes. "I told him he could be my brother. I hope that is okay." Marcus's heart cracked open, wide open, broken open. "It is okay, baby. It is more than okay." She drifted back to sleep. Marcus stood, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, walked out of the room. He had a promise to keep. He found Dr. Rivera outside Danny's room. "How is he?" Dr. Rivera shook her head, not in defeat, in disbelief. "He should be dead. Core temperature 27 degrees when he arrived. Severe frostbite on both feet, both hands, parts of his face. Dehydration, exhaustion, malnutrition. This boy has not had a proper meal in months, maybe longer. His growth is stunted. He has old fractures that healed without medical treatment. Scarring on his hands consistent with years of manual labor." Marcus's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists at his sides. "But he will live?" "He will live. His feet were badly damaged, but we have managed to save them. Full recovery will take months of rehabilitation. But yes, he will live." Marcus exhaled, a breath he had been holding since 3:47 in the morning. "There is something else you should know." Dr. Rivera's voice dropped. "This boy has no records, no medical history, no emergency contacts. No one has come looking for him. When we ran his description through the system, we found a missing persons report from 3 years ago. Foster care runaway. The foster family he ran from was investigated for child labor violations 6 months after he disappeared. 7 other children were removed from the home. Marcus did not move, did not blink, but something behind his eyes changed. Something hardened into steel. He has been living on the streets for 3 years, Dr. Rivera continued. An 11-year-old child, homeless, surviving alone through Minnesota winters. And he used what little he had, everything he had, to save your daughter. She paused. The social worker will be here tomorrow morning. They want to place him back into the foster care system. No, the word came out hard. Final. The voice Marcus used in rooms where disagreement was not an option. The voice that had ended arguments and started legends and made men twice his size take a step back. Mr. Stone, I understand your feelings, but it is not that simple. There are procedures, legal requirements. The state has jurisdiction over... Dr. Rivera. Marcus turned to face her. His eyes were red from crying, but behind the red was iron. I have 500 brothers who will stand between that boy and anyone who tries to take him somewhere he does not want to go. I have lawyers, I have resources, and I have a debt that I will spend the rest of my life repaying. He looked through the window at Danny. Small, thin, bandaged, battered by a life that had shown him nothing but cruelty. And still he had walked 12 miles through a killing storm to save a stranger. That boy saved my daughter, saved my mother, gave everything he had for people he did not know. And you are telling me the system wants to put him back in the same machine that failed him so completely he chose to live in a drainage tunnel rather than ask for help again? Marcus's voice broke. He did not try to control it. He is mine now, Dr. Rivera. Do you understand what I am saying? He is mine, and nobody is taking him anywhere. Dr. Rivera was quiet for a long moment. She had been practicing medicine for 22 years. She had seen parents fight for children. She had seen the system fail children. She had seen what happened when the two collided. She had never seen anything like the look in this man's eyes. I will make some calls, see what I can do. Thank you. She walked away. Marcus stayed at the window, watching the boy sleep, watching his son sleep. Danny woke to warmth. This was wrong. Warmth meant danger. Warmth meant he had been found, caught, taken somewhere he did not want to be. His eyes snapped open, his body tensed, ready to run. The way he had been ready to run every morning for 3 years. But his legs would not work. They were wrapped in bandages, elevated on pillows, connected to machines that beeped softly. He was trapped. Easy, son, easy. You are safe. Danny's head whipped toward the voice. A man sat in the chair beside his bed. Huge. The biggest man Danny had ever seen. Arms like bridge cables. Chest like a barrel. Brown hair with silver at the temples. Face that looked like it had been carved from granite and beaten by 50 years of hard road. He was wearing leather, black leather everything, and on his vest, patches and symbols that Danny did not recognize but somehow understood. This was a dangerous man, the kind of man Danny had learned to avoid on the streets. Who are you? Danny's voice came out raw, broken. What do you want? The man leaned forward. His eyes were red, tired, but not angry. Something else. Something Danny had no name for because he had not seen it directed at him in 3 years. My name is Marcus Stone. Most people call me Hammer. I am Sophie's father. Danny's entire body changed. The tension left. The fear left. Everything left except one question. Is she okay? She is alive, because of you. Danny sank back against the pillows. Relief flooded through him so powerful it made the room spin. Good. That is good. I am glad. Marcus stared at him. For a long moment, neither spoke. The machines beeped. The hospital hummed. The storm howled outside the windows. Then slowly, a tear rolled down Marcus Stone's weathered cheek. Then another. Then more. You carried her 12 miles, through a blizzard that killed 27 people. You gave her everything you had, And when you got to the hospital, you put her down, rang the bell, and crawled away to die alone. Danny did not respond. What was there to say? It was true. Why? Marcus's voice cracked wide open. Why would you do that? Risk your life for a stranger. Give everything for a girl you did not know. Walk away from help when you were dying because you thought you did not deserve it. Danny stared at the ceiling, thought about the question, about the long walk, about his mother's ghost, about Sophie's voice in the dark. Because she asked me not to leave her. That is it? That is the only reason? Danny met the man's eyes, held them, spoke the truth he had discovered somewhere around mile 5 when his mother asked him why this promise was different. Because someone should have done it for me, and no one did. I did not want her to know what that feels like, to be alone, to be forgotten, to call for help and have nobody come. I know what that feels like. I have known it for 3 years, and it is worse than the cold. It is worse than anything. Marcus's face crumbled, the granite cracked, the iron melted. More tears fell and he did not wipe them away. I spent 3 years being nobody. Danny continued. His voice was barely above a whisper. 3 years being invisible, walking through crowds and having no one see me, starving and freezing and hurting and having no one care. Your daughter saw me. Through that car window, in that storm, she saw me. She asked me for help. She trusted me. Nobody had trusted me in years. Danny's eyes burned. He blinked hard. I could not let her down. I could not be another person who failed her. Even if it killed me. Even if nobody ever knew. It did not matter. She saw me. That was enough. Marcus reached out and took Danny's hand. The grip was gentle. Impossibly gentle for hands that could crush steel. I know now. I know what you did. And I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel invisible again. Danny pulled his hand back, the old fear rising, the walls going up, the armor that had kept him alive but kept him alone. You do not have to do that. I did not do it for a reward. I did it because it was right. I know. That is exactly why you deserve one. The social worker is coming tomorrow. Danny said it flatly. I heard the nurses talking. They are going to put me back in the system, into another home with another family that collects checks and does not care. No, they are not. Danny laughed, bitter, sharp. The laugh of a child who had learned that hope was a weapon adults used against you. That is not how it works. I am a runaway, a case number, a file in a cabinet that nobody reads. They do not let kids like me go. They process us, move us around, lose us, find us, lose us again. That is how the system works. That is all it does. Marcus leaned closer, his eyes locked onto Danny's, the eyes of a man who had never broken a promise in his life. I told them no. I told them that if they try to take you, they will have to go through me. And if they go through me, they will have to go through every brother in my club. 500 of them, from 6 states. Why? Why would you do that for me? Because my daughter asked me to. Marcus's voice softened. She wants you to be her brother. She said she made you promise. She said you always keep your promises. Danny's throat closed. The walls shook. The armor cracked. I did promise that, but I did not think she would remember. She was barely conscious. She was dying. She remembers everything, Danny. She remembers you falling. She remembers you getting back up. She remembers you talking about your mother's pirate voice and burned toast in vanilla. She remembers every word. Danny turned away, stared at the ceiling, tried to process what was happening, tried to fit it into the framework of the world as he understood it. A world where adults left and promises broke, and hope was a lie that kept you standing still long enough to get hurt again. It did not fit. None of it fit. I do not understand this. What? Any of it. You. This. Someone wanting me. It does not make sense. People do not want kids like me. Damaged kids. Street kids. Kids with no family and no records and no future. That is not how it works. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, full of pain that had nothing to do with Danny and everything to do with a delivery room 6 years ago. When my wife died, I wanted to die too. The pain was so big I could not see past it, could not breathe through it, could not find a single reason to keep my heart beating. My brothers saved me. My club. They showed up every day. They did not try to fix me. They did not try to make it better. They just showed up every single day until I could stand on my own again. He paused, wiped his eyes. I want to do the same for you. Give you what someone gave me when I had nothing. A chance, a choice, a family. Danny looked at him, at this giant, terrifying, leather-clad biker who was weeping over a homeless boy he had met 20 minutes ago. What if you change your mind? What if you wake up next month and decide you do not want me anymore? What if it gets hard and you just leave, the way everybody else left? Marcus smiled, sad and fierce and certain. Then I will find you, the same way I found you today, as many times as it takes, for the rest of my life. I am not going anywhere, Danny. You can test me. You can push me away. You can build walls 10 feet thick. I will still be here, every single morning, every single night, until you believe it. Danny stared at him, and for the first time in 3 years, for the first time since his mother died and his father vanished and the world became a cold, brutal machine that chewed up children and spit out survivors. For the first time since he crawled out of a closet under the stairs and ran into the dark and decided that being alone was safer than being hurt, Danny Mercer allowed himself to hope. Okay, he whispered it. The smallest word, the biggest leap. Okay, I will try. Marcus squeezed his hand, gentle and fierce at the same time. That is all I ask, son. That is all anyone can ask. Danny looked at their hands, the giant's hand wrapped around the boy's, holding on, and Danny held on back. If you believe every child deserves someone who will never give up on them, write "I believe" in the comments. Let Danny know he is not alone. Danny stood in front of 500 people and could not stop his hands from shaking. They filled every chair in the Hells Angels clubhouse. They lined the walls. They spilled out into the parking lot where speakers carried the sound to dozens more who could not fit inside. 500 members from chapters across Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Dakotas, and Michigan. Men and women who had driven through the night, through what remained of the blizzard, through ice and danger and roads that should have been impassable. For him, when Danny walked through the door, flanked by Marcus on one side and a massive man named Dutch on the other, every single person in that room stood up. The sound hit Danny like a wall. 500 people rising in unison, the scrape of chairs, the creak of leather. A wave of noise that washed over him and froze him where he stood. They are standing for you, Marcus murmured it close to his ear. Accept it. Danny did not know how to accept it, did not know what to do with his hands or his eyes or the tears that were already falling. He had spent 3 years learning to be invisible. Now 500 people were looking directly at him, seeing him, and what he saw looking back was not pity, not charity, not the careful, measured kindness of social workers who smiled too much and helped too little. It was respect. Marcus took his place at the front. The room fell silent. Brothers and sisters, we gather today to honor something rare, something most of us have spent our lives searching for without knowing its name. True courage. He turned to Danny. 3 weeks ago, my daughter Sophie was trapped in a car during the worst blizzard this state has seen in 50 years. She was 5 years old. She had a heart condition. She was alone with my unconscious mother in a ditch on County Road 7. No help coming, no hope. Marcus paused. His voice had cracked. He breathed through it. Then Danny Mercer appeared. Danny was 10 years old, homeless. He had nothing, no family, no shelter, no reason to stop. He had every right to walk past that car and save himself. He did not. He broke the window with his own boot. He wrapped my mother in every piece of fabric he could find. He put my daughter on his back. And he walked 12 miles through a blizzard that killed 27 people. The room was silent. 500 people barely breathing. He fell 21 times. 21 times he hit the ground. Exhausted, frozen, dying. And 21 times he got back up because he made a promise to a 5-year-old girl he had never met. Marcus turned to face Danny directly. His eyes were bright. His voice was steel and glass, breaking and holding at the same time. Danny Crawford, you saved my daughter's life. You saved my mother's life. You reminded every person in this room why we ride, why we fight, why we call each other family. Because family is not blood. Family is showing up. Family is keeping promises. Family is carrying someone through the darkness when everything in you screams to stop. Dutch stepped forward carrying something in his hands. Black leather. Heavy. Patches stitched with care. This is a prospect vest, Marcus said. Modified. You are not old enough to be a full member, but this vest marks you as one of us, as family, as someone under the protection of every brother and sister in this room, in this state, in this country. Dutch held the vest out. Danny stared at it. You do not have to accept it. This is a choice. It will always be a choice. But if you want a family, if you want people who will show up for you and fight for you and never abandon you, this is what we are offering. Danny thought about his mother, about her promise that everything would be okay. He thought about his father, about the promise that was never made. He thought about Sophie, about the promise he made in a frozen car that almost killed him. He stood up, walked to Dutch, took the vest. The room erupted. 500 voices raised in a roar that shook the walls. 500 pairs of hands clapping, stomping, pounding on anything within reach. 500 people celebrating a 10-year-old boy who had walked through hell. Danny slipped the vest over his shoulders. It was heavy, warm. It smelled like leather and something else, something he did not have a word for until much later. It smelled like belonging. Marcus wrapped an arm around him, pulled him close. Welcome to the family, son. For real this time. Danny buried his face in Marcus's chest and cried. Not tears of sadness, not tears of fear. For the first time in 3 years, Danny Mercer cried tears of joy. The celebration lasted past midnight. Food on every surface, music filling the air. Grown men with tattoos on their necks wiping tears from their eyes and telling Danny he had restored their faith in everything. Then Sophie arrived, released from the hospital that morning, still weak, still pale. Ruth had insisted on bringing her despite every doctor's objection. My granddaughter wants to see her brother get his vest. No power on earth is stopping that. Sophie was in a wheelchair. Bundled in so many blankets, she looked like a fabric snowman. But her eyes were bright, and when she saw Danny, she let out a shriek that cut through the music, the voices, the thunder of 500 people. Danny! The crowd parted. Danny crossed the room and dropped to his knees beside her. Hey boss, you got a vest. Sophie reached out and touched the leather with her small fingers. It is so cool. Does this mean you are a biker now? I think it means I am family. You were already family. Sophie said it with the simple certainty of a child who did not understand that such things were supposed to be complicated. You became family in the car, when you promised. I guess I did. I want a vest too. When I am older, a matching one. She looked up at Marcus. Can I, Daddy? Marcus laughed. When you are older, much older, and only if Danny says it is okay. Sophie turned back. Her blue eyes locked onto his. It is okay, Danny said. Matching vests, I promise. Sophie threw her arms around his neck and hugged him with a strength that should not have been possible from a body that small. Thank you, she whispered it into his ear. Thank you for not leaving me. Thank you for getting up every time you fell. You made me get up. Every time. It was you. We saved each other. Yeah, Danny held her tighter. Yeah, we did. That night, after the clubhouse emptied and the music stopped, Danny walked out to the back porch. The snow had finally stopped. The sky was clear for the first time in days. He looked up at the stars and thought about his mother. "I did it, Mama." He whispered it into the cold. "I found a family, like you said I would. It just took a while." And somewhere in the silence of that frozen night, he could almost hear her voice. Warm, proud, close. "I knew you would, baby. I always knew." 5 years later, Danny stood at a podium in the Duluth East High School auditorium, 15 years old, 6 inches taller, shoulders broad, the feral watchfulness gone from his eyes, replaced by quiet confidence. In the back rows, 47 men and women in leather vests drew nervous glances from the other attendees. 5 years ago, Danny began, I was living in a drainage tunnel under the Stillwater Bridge. I was 10 years old, homeless, invisible. I had no family, no hope, no reason to believe tomorrow would be different from today. He paused, looked at the leather-clad section. Marcus sat with Dutch on one side and Maggie on the other. Ruth Stone, 76 years old and tougher than ever, sat beside them. In the front row, Sophie bounced with barely contained excitement. 10 years old now, healthy, strong. Her heart surgery 2 years earlier, funded entirely by the Hells Angels who raised $75,000 in 3 months through charity rides, had given her a future the doctors once said was impossible. Then a blizzard came, and I found a little girl who needed me, and she changed everything. Danny gestured to the screen behind him. A logo appeared, a road stretching into snow, a small figure walking, a larger figure waiting in the distance. The 12-Mile Foundation is dedicated to finding and helping homeless children across Minnesota, not feeding them temporarily, not sheltering them for a night, finding them families, real families, people who show up. In the past 6 months, we have placed 14 children with families, 14 kids who were living on the streets, invisible, forgotten, 14 kids who now have homes. The auditorium erupted. The leather section stood first. Then the rest followed until every person in the room was on their feet. After the presentation, a woman approached. Thin, worn, haunted eyes. Beside her stood a boy, 8 years old, dirty, ragged, eyes holding the same feral watchfulness Danny remembered from his own reflection. Danny crossed the room and crouched in front of him. "Hey, I am Danny. What is your name?" The boy said nothing, just stared, waiting for the lie, waiting for the hurt. His mother spoke. "His name is Jesse. I saw what you did, what you are doing. I cannot take care of him anymore. I am sick. He deserves better than what I can give him." Danny looked at Jesse, at the walls in his eyes, the same walls Danny had built, the same walls 1,000 homeless children built every day. "Jesse, I know you are scared. I know you do not trust me. You have no reason to. But I promise you we are going to help." The boy stared, silent, watchful. "Why? Why would you help me?" "Because someone helped me once, when I was just like you, invisible, forgotten, alone, and I promised I would spend the rest of my life paying it forward." Jesse's eyes filled, the walls cracked, just slightly, just enough. "Will you promise not to leave me?" Danny's heart broke open and rebuilt itself in a single breath. He saw himself in this boy. Every cold night, every empty trailer, every broken trust, every moment of believing that nobody would ever come. "I promise." Danny said it the way he had said it to Sophie in a frozen car 5 years ago. With everything he had, "I will never leave you." Behind him, Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. Sophie took his hand. Ruth appeared in the doorway, wiping tears. 20 years later, the headline read, 12-Mile Foundation celebrates 20th anniversary. 3,100 children placed with families. Danny Mercer stood at a podium, mid-30s, kind eyes, a jaw that looked remarkably like Marcus Stone's, who had passed peacefully 2 years prior, surrounded by family. Beside Danny stood Dr. Sophie Stone, pediatric cardiac surgeon, dedicating her life to children with heart conditions. Behind them, a banner read, Because family is a choice. My mother told me everything would be okay. Danny's voice carried across 2,000 people. For a long time, I thought she was wrong. But standing here today, looking at all of you, I finally understand what she meant. He let the tears fall. Everything is okay, not because the universe is kind, not because suffering has a purpose, but because we choose to show up for each other, because we carry each other through the darkness, because we keep our promises. He raised his fist to his heart, then extended it outward, the foundation's symbol. Here is to the next 20 years. Here is to the next 3,000 children. Here is to everyone who has ever felt invisible and learned that they matter. Here is to never walking alone. 2,000 voices rose as one, and Danny Mercer stood in the center of it all, surrounded by love, filled with purpose, alive. His mother had been right. Everything was okay. And somewhere in the wind, if you listen closely, you could hear a mother's voice. Clear, proud, eternal. I knew you would make it, baby. I always knew. If this story made you feel something, you are not alone. Subscribe if you believe every child deserves a family. Write 12 miles in the comments if you will share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because some stories do not end when the screen goes dark. Some stories walk with you forever.